Miami, SMU, and Louisville all have ACC title expectations and playoff hopes this upcoming season. We'll break it all down right here on Locked On ACC.
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On ACC podcast. I am Julian Council. No Kenton Gibbs today as we begin our ACC previews. Today's episode of Locked On ACC is brought to you by Kalshi. For a limited time, download the Kalshi app and use code Locked On to get $10 when you trade $10. As I mentioned, Kenton, former NC State football letterman, is not with us today, but we do have three Locked On ACC hosts are going to join today's show. Alex Donno of Locked On Canes. He is back here on Locked On ACC to preview Miami. Grayson Singleton from Locked On SMU is here to preview the Mustangs. And then Dalton Pence from Locked On Louisville is also here to preview the Cards heading into this 2026 season. So over the next couple of weeks, what we're going to do is we're going to have on all the network hosts to come on to preview their teams. The shows that we do not have a host for, it'll be Kenton and I breaking down those teams, previewing them, giving you over-under win totals, preseason vibes, and our thoughts about each ACC team heading into week 0 on the 29th of this month, on Saturday the 29th. So next Saturday, cannot wait to get there. So let's start off with Alex Donno from Locked On Canes to preview the Miami Hurricanes. Y'all have been asking, where's Alex Donno? Well, I found him. Here he is to preview the Miami Hurricanes as the U is officially back after last season making a run to the national title game, coming up just short there in their hometown against Indiana. But after 2 decades of all of us wondering, when is Miami going to win the ACC? It feels like this year, Alex, 2026 is finally going to be the year at long last. Of course, Alex Donno, the host of Locked On Canes, is here with us on Locked On ACC. Good to see you, my friend. How you doing?
Julian, it's great to see you, man. I'm loving your work. And as far as Miami and the ACC goes, if it doesn't happen in 2026, I don't know when it would happen, right? Because it seems like, at least on paper, and the games are played on grass, not paper, this looks to be the year where the stars have aligned. This is probably overall the best roster Miami has had in a couple of decades. The ACC beyond Miami seems to be as wide open as it's been in a long time. Miami's heavily favored to win the conference, so yeah, we'll talk all about the reasons why it should happen, but if it doesn't happen this year, it may never happen.
Yeah, well, let's start there because, yeah, you look around. FSU is a mess. Clemson, we'll see. I still feel like they have talent there. I'm not completely out on Dabo Swinney ever being able to have a winning title type of team in Death Valley, but I kind of need to see it at this point in time. SMU, yeah, they look good, but they don't have the same talent as Miami. Louisville, I'm high on them, but again, don't have the same talent as Miami. So what would need to happen for this program in year 22 of conference membership to not win the ACC title?
Well, the first place I would start is the most difficult conference game on Miami's schedule. And you were right to say you never completely count Dabo out, right? So, as far as the conference schedule goes, the one every Miami fan should have circled is a trip to Death Valley in October to play Clemson. Now, Miami will probably be favored in that game. I've watched Miami, Julian, several times over the last couple of decades play against Clemson, years ago and get absolutely demolished. Clemson once beat Miami 58-7 in South Florida, which got a Miami coach fired at the time. That was about a decade ago. But the tables have really turned. Like, Miami will go in there with a better looking roster. And we're still very unsure what the quarterback situation is going to be there with Chris Vizina at Clemson. But going into Death Valley is always going to be a difficult game. So I think you start there. And then, if Miami were to, lose to Clemson, that obviously shrinks your margin for error a lot when it comes to trying to win the ACC. And you would have to avoid a lot of other conference games that you could look at as potential trap games. Like when Miami plays the North Carolina Tar Heels, again, a game Miami should win on the road, but I think that's a week before Notre Dame. So you want to make sure that that's not a trap game. Miami will have a game against Virginia Tech. There's a lot of hype there, with what James Franklin is trying to build and rebuild. Miami will play against Pitt, who they beat convincingly last year, but every year is a new team in a new situation. Even a team like Wake Forest, Miami plays on the road. They had what we refer to as the quietest 9-win season of all time last year, but it's a team not to be completely counted out. So, yeah, I mean, Julian, if Miami were to fall short of winning the ACC this year, it would have to be kind of a lot of the issues that have plagued Miami in recent years, and that is really good team, but you find a way to stub your toe and lose a game or two that you shouldn't lose. I think that's how that would have to play out. And then on the flip side, to get to the ACC championship game and hopefully win the darn thing, you have to make sure you're taking care of business, right? Because there's really only one team on your schedule, and it's not a conference game that you're going to be underdogs against this year, and that's Notre Dame on the road. So favored in all of your conference games, conceivably 9 of those. You just got to show you can take care of business.
Yeah, and it feels like focus has been the issue or lack thereof in some of these games. Certainly Carson Beck against Louisville did not acquit himself well last season. The SMU game, there was issues there, but it's Louisville and SMU. Like this year, I mean, even Georgia Tech a couple seasons ago, I'm just not really seeing the landmines. And that's like I asked you, like, how can this go wrong? Like, you're really stretching when it comes down to that October 31st game in Chapel Hill. I don't know where UNC is going to be at that point in time, but I'm not expecting they're going to be up for that game against Miami. You look at Florida State, Lord knows where they're at, but that's going to be a game at home. We know with the U playing FSU, they'll be focused for that game. Maybe the week after at home against Pitt. That's the one. I mean, Clemson's obviously. I'm having a hard time seeing the landmines, and that's my thing where, yeah, outside of Notre Dame, maybe Clemson's the other game that they potentially lose. It comes down supposedly, I would think, to Virginia Tech and where James Franklin has them by the time they get to November 20th. But other than that, I just don't really see how they possibly do not get there. But we all lived through the ACC Coastal, and there were many years we felt like Miami would be in Charlotte, and they've done it once. Yeah. One time in 2017, and God, that was a brutal game against Clemson that evening in Charlotte. Tell me this, Alex. What's one thing you're excited about, one thing you're concerned about, and one thing you're intrigued about when looking at the Canes heading into the season?
Yeah, excited about. I think you have to start with the offensive firepower. Malachi Tony. He looks like he's doing everything he can to keep sharpening and improving his game, because obviously you never want to be complacent after a breakout freshman season. I mean, he had 1,200 plus receiving yards, led the nation in receptions last year. Tony has actually added some muscle to his frame. He's gotten stronger. It doesn't seem to be at the expense of his speed, and he's always the first guy in the facility. He's there at 5 a.m. Just work ethic like that for an 18-year-old is crazy to me. Of course, adding Darian Mensah, who transfers from Duke to Miami, so he stays in the ACC. He is excelling as you would expect him to, and he's got Cooper Barkate, his top receiver at Duke, who came over to Miami with him. So I think that's the primary source of excitement. I would say the primary source of concern would just be a couple of position groups that are either not nearly as deep by Miami standards or replacing a lot of starters. I think the one that's like my biggest concern area is tight end. Miami, the guy who was probably going to be their second string tight end, Luka Gilbert, suffered a season-ending knee injury before training camp even started. That's a group Miami was already not deep at to begin with. The starting tight end, Elijah Lofton, had a very difficult year through injury last year, so they really need him to step up and put it together. And then behind Lofton, it's probably going to be a couple of true freshmen getting a lot of playing time. Really good players, but young. Gavin Mueller and Israel Briggs, who are trying to get up to speed and get ready to get on the field a lot. You've got the offensive and defensive lines, which I'll go on record, Julian, saying I think both of those units are going to be really, really good. But despite losing a bunch of guys, right? You lose Bain and Mesidor. You replace them with Damon Wilson, comes from Mizzou in the transfer portal. Marquise Lightfoot and Armando Blunt are playing really well. On the offensive line, you're probably going to have a 5-star true freshman, Jackson Cantwell, starting at one of those spots, which is both exciting and a little scary at the same time. And then what was your third? So it did.
And what intrigued you?
Intrigues. Okay.
Yes.
Intrigue. I'll stick with that. I think what intrigues me are an excellent recruiting class and kind of seeing which true freshmen are able to make an impact. Because obviously last year, Malachi Tony at receiver, Bryce Fitzgerald at defensive back was last year. So this year, I look at Jackson Cantwell and possibly Ben Congdon on the offensive line. Two true freshmen that are making their case for a lot of playing time. J.J. Dunnigan and Camden Portis in the defensive backfield. Camden Portis is the son of Clinton Portis, Miami legend, who's he's from North Carolina, so you're probably aware of some of his high school exploits. He's doing really well. Again, Miami's got a deep defensive back room, so we'll see how much he gets on the field, but he's making his case. So I think some of the young, exciting talent is really what intrigues me.
Yeah, the Cantwell thing, I know they paid him a pretty penny to come in. He's a 5-star. He looks the part, and we saw with CeCe Maiwanoa, they were able to start him from day one, and he held up there at tackle. And I've seen in recent camp reports that he's been repping at guard. So that is really interesting, because I think a lot of people thought going into the season, maybe that's still how it's going to play out. He'll play tackle, at least long term, but I'm very intrigued. I'm not worried about Mario Cristobal, Alex Mirabal, offensive line at all. I think they're going to be just fine there. Miami's over-under win total, looking over at FanDuel Sportsbook, is at 10.5, which basically means, do you think that they lose another game, provided that they lose to Miami? So do they lose Miami and likely Clemson, or do they beat both of those teams?
Notre Dame, you mean?
Oh, sorry, Notre Dame. Yeah, do they lose to Notre Dame and Clemson? Do they not lose either of those teams? We got over-under here, and what do you think this team's going to do this season? Because they were so close last year when it came to the national title game. Indiana's a damn good football team. I was sitting there hoping Miami was going to get it done. Thought after all the history of winning in Miami, winning national championships, that it was going to happen that evening. And damn, it was a road game. And they did not, of course, get that win. So are you over, are you under? And what are your expectations and like the ceiling for this team this season?
Yeah, so I lean to the over, and as our mutual friend Kenton knows very well, I've got my FanDuel odds open pretty much 24 hours a day. But this is one where it's like, I wouldn't say that this is like a super strong play or a steal, but I do lean to the over because I think Miami can win 11 or 12 games in the regular season. Like 10.5 is such a big number that the margins are pretty thin. But for everything we talked about, I mean, Miami will be an underdog against Notre Dame, but it's not impossible for them to win that game, of course, and they should win all the other 11 games in the regular season schedule. In terms of goals or where this team can go, winning the ACC, I feel like, is a necessary bar that you have to set. Like they were able,
goal number one.
Yeah, it's goal number one. It's goal like number 1 through 5, right? Because like they were able to get to the national championship game without winning the ACC, which is a hack that you can't necessarily count on doing every single year. So win the conference, get a strong playoff seed, and make a run, right? I mean, I know like the old school Miami guy in me wants to say it's natty or bust because it used to, was that for a long time in the 80s and 90s. But listen, there's a lot of good teams in college football. I do believe Miami is one of them, but I will say my goal, win the ACC, get a strong playoff seeding, and try to make a run in the postseason. And I think this team is very hungry, and I think that they can accomplish that. And I think anything you do above that is icing on the cake if you can actually win your 6th title this year.
Yeah, I think natty or bust in a 12-team playoff is kind of tough to say.
Yeah.
I think getting to the semifinal at the very least, that should be kind of like the goal for everybody. And then you see how the chips fall then. But that is Alex Donno. Of course, y'all already know that. Check him over on Locked On Canes, of course, doing a great job covering the Miami Hurricanes. And take a quick pause and come back here and talk about the SMU Mustangs, who could be facing off against Miami here in Charlotte later on in December. We'll bring on Grayson Singleton from Locked On SMU here in just a moment on Locked On ACC. There are more live events than ever worth seeing right now. Games, concerts, comedy shows, festivals. The hard part usually isn't deciding what you want to attend. It's actually getting the tickets. Between long wait times, confusing checkout processes, and surprise fees, buying tickets can sometimes feel harder than it should. That's why so many fans are turning to Game Time. The app is built to make buying tickets simple with upfront pricing, seat views before you buy, and exclusive savings opportunities that help you get to the events you want without the usual hassle. There's just something different about being there live, whether it's a crowd reaction, the energy in the building, or a moment that everyone experiences together. It's one of those things that doesn't fully translate through a screen. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets to every type of event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Moving on now, talking about the SMU Mustangs. To help us do that is Grayson Singleton of Locked On SMU. Grayson, how you doing, man?
What's going on, my friend? How we doing, brother?
Doing well. We are counting down the days. We are almost there to college football season. Only 10 days away from week 0 as North Carolina heads to Iowa to face off against TCU. And then you also have Virginia hosting NC State. FSU's playing. Stanford's playing. Ready for some ACC football. And SMU was certainly ready for some ACC football when they entered the league. You look at them, they've almost run roughshod over the ACC in their first 2 years. CFP appearance, ACC title appearance year 1. Last year, we're very close to being back in the ACC title game and quite possibly back in the college football playoff, 14-2 in conference play. I mean, the vibes got to be pretty good heading to year 3, right?
100%. The vibes are good. Touching base with some people, some sources in the program, this is their most talented team that they've had. You think about the first couple of years where you go undefeated in conference play in year 1, you lose 2 games in year 2, and this year they think is their most talented year since they've joined the ACC. The vibes are great, and when you look at what it's taken to beat SMU in ACC play, the loss to Wake Forest last year is because the offense had its probably worst day since Rhett Lashley took over. And in the game against California to keep them out of the ACC championship game, their defense had an atrocious day. So it's taken one side of the ball to just be absolutely just abysmal to even beat this team in conference play. Vibes are really high. I mean, I expect some big things from them this year.
Yeah, and that's kind of concerning for the rest of the conference if this is Rhett Lashley's best team since getting there and, getting to the ACC and probably getting to SMU, if we're being honest, knowing the level of talent that you're able to get now being in the ACC. And I saw that Addison Nichols, who is one of the starting guards there at SMU, talked about last week how they have a national championship mindset. I mean, can you buy into them potentially getting, let's say, to the Final Four of the playoff? Because national title in this new 12-team era, that's hard for any school to say national title or bust. Maybe Texas, the amount of money they spent this year, would be a team that's like that. Ohio State some years. But as far as getting deep in the playoff, is that something you think could be realistic for this team?
They can win a playoff game. I don't know if they have the talent in the trenches to get to the Final Four. Is it possible? Yes, because they've got the quarterback to do so, and I think they've got the coach and play caller to do so. But you got an excellent left tackle, you've got an excellent center, you got one excellent guard. They've got another guard spot, they've got another tackle spot. They're kind of up in the air, and they have to replace the entirety of the defensive line. They have to replace like 6 defensive linemen from last year. So when I look at it from a trenches standpoint, I'm in more of a see it to believe it type mode. Everywhere else, yes, they could get deep in the playoff with that kind of skill position talent, with that type of quarterback talent, that type of running back talent. But you and I both know, covering this thing, when you're going up against those cats from the Big Ten and from the SEC, the way to beat them, even Miami and the ACC as well, you got to be able to hold your own in the trenches. So the trenches, to me, is still a question that needs to be answered as for if this team can get to the Final Four. But can this team, as presently constructed, win a playoff game? Yes, they can win a playoff game, maybe 2 if the matchup is right.
It's interesting, too, that first year in the league, they added a lot of guys from P4 schools in the trenches and defensively. And you look at the last 2 portal cycles, haven't necessarily done it to that kind of level. So it is interesting to hear about the physicality that they had over their most recent scrimmage over the weekend. And a lot of the guys are trying to rely on to help them get back to that playoff stage. But absolutely, we have a guy like Kevin Jennings, you're going to have a chance when it comes to the playoff. And I know what happened in Happy Valley a couple years ago is probably still tough to think about, and it's going to be in the back of a lot of people's minds if they get back to that stage. But there's a Heisman campaign when it comes to Kevin Jennings. He is quite possibly the most accomplished quarterback left in this league heading into 2026. What are you expecting from him, and can he take that next step in this fourth season now in Rhett Lashley's offense?
I'm expecting him to have a big year, and I'm expecting him to clean up pretty much his only bugaboo that he's had in his career so far, and that's taking care of the football. Now, Coach Lashley has downplayed that publicly, but I don't think there's any way to navigate around the fact that he turned the ball over 13 times last year.
Yeah.
That's a thing. And that's a number that, even though that's about 1 a game, that's still a number that a lot of people, including myself, are going to be a little bit uncomfortable with. So if he can drop that to about 7 or 8 interceptions this season, and he can continue to thrive within this system and then thrive with making the plays above the X's and O's, which he's capable of doing, this is, I think, his best skill position group that they've put around him since he became the starter midway through the 2024 season. So he's got the playmakers to work with. They revamped the tight end room in the transfer portal. Kendrick Raphael, all ACC honorable mention a year ago at Cal, comes over to SMU after scoring the game-winning touchdown for Cal to beat SMU last year. Comes over to SMU, and then you got another year older, another year wiser, and the last thing is health. He was playing banged up ever since week 2 last year. So if his health cooperates this year, you get another year older, another year wiser, and then the best skill position group that you've played with. Kevin Jennings, is in play for a dark horse Heisman candidacy. I do believe that.
Okay, do you think they'll run him this season? Last year, you mentioned the ankle injury. They couldn't really do that. Do you think that comes back into his repertoire this season?
I think it comes back. I don't know if it comes back to the degree it did in 2024. Now here's where his health really limited him. It's not in the design runs. It was the off script. It was the off script that I think was missed with the ankle injury. I think that comes back a little bit more than the design runs because it'll be sprinkled in, but we all know the name of the game. Whether you're built like Kevin Jennings or whether you're a more stocky built quarterback, nobody wants their quarterback taking a bunch of unnecessary shots. So I think they're going to pick their spots in that regard. But I think you brought in a guy like Kendrick Raphael. You have a deep running back core that can tote the rock, and they've got an RPO-based scheme where it's Kevin's job to be the distributor, be the point guard, get the ball out to those players. So I think a lot of his running is going to come off script to complement all of that.
Yeah, and I think for him to truly have a shot at the Heisman, other than SMU winning a lot of games, he's probably going to need to use his legs this upcoming season. So we'll see what he looks like from that perspective. Give me one thing you're excited about with this team as far as the roster goes, one concern, and then something that has you intrigued heading into the season.
One thing I'm excited about is just how deep this wide receiver core is. It's a deep wide receiver core. Jalen Hale has not been able to stay healthy since he came into college, but this is the healthiest he's been this offseason. That's what I've been told. And he looks really good. Looks reminiscent of the 4-star coming out of Longview, Texas, that he was a few years ago. Yannick Smith, a big, physically imposing wide receiver. SMU fans know about Ymir Knight. And then Jalen Cooper, I think, has the highest ceiling of them all as a sophomore. I like him a lot. You got to see some exposure of him when Jordan Hudson went down with the injury last year. So the wide receiver core really, really excites me. Concerning, I have 2. One, the tackle spot opposite of PJ Williams. What is that going to look like? The guy that they think they're going to put there has been in the program for a few years. He's a vet, but hasn't really been much of a starter. So we'll see what he looks like. That's one concern. And then my other concern is, does the cornerback play that really ailed them last year not take a step forward? I think that can be something that could prevent them from getting to where they can go if that corner play does not markedly improve, because the corner play was terrible. It was terrible last year, let them down in certain spots. That's got to improve. I think it will, but if it doesn't, that would be a concern. And then something I'm interested in is probably a safety spot. I look at the safety spot last year with Ahmad Moses and Isaiah Wacobia. One of those dudes is gone. The other is back because of the new 5 to play 5 and the judge's ruling that allows certain players from the 2022 class back. Yeah. But Ahmad's still coming off of a hernia surgery. So there's that, but you've got this sophomore in Tyron Polley who really flashed last year, and you brought in Jimmy Wyrick. And that's on top of the fact that last year Isaiah Wacobia had kind of a down year to end his SMU career. So the safety spot was a little bit up and down, as was the entirety of the secondary, but I'm intrigued to see if they actually rebound and put together, 12, 13 weeks of really solid play this year on the back end.
Okay, one final thing for you here. Looking over at FanDuel Sportsbook, SMU's win total is 8.5. You going over or you going under? I think I know very clearly where you're going with this one.
Yeah, 8.5 for this team, given its schedule. We have to contextualize everything here.
Yeah.
There is not a team on this schedule other than Notre Dame that is more talented than SMU. So when I look at it from that perspective, sure, they've got some pitfalls in there. You play the first 3 games within 12 days, 2 of them on the road against ACC teams at Florida State and at Louisville. That's a little bit of a concern, but 8.5, man, it just seems like free money to me. With this schedule, with this team's talent, and the quality of the coach, I'm gonna smash the over here. I think that's free money.
Yeah, those 2 road games start off the season in Tallahassee on Labor Day night, then at Louisville. That could be very telling about how good this team could be. I'm also going over here with SMU, but he is Grayson Singleton of Locked On SMU. Check him out over on YouTube and wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And pony up. Excited to see what the Mustangs can do this season. We'll take a quick pause here on Locked On ACC. Come back, and we're previewing Louisville. Dalton Pence of Locked On Louisville will join us next. Before the season even kicks off, everyone's making predictions. Who wins the conference? Who makes the playoffs? Who's lifting the trophy at season's end? On Kalshi, America's #1 prediction market platform, you can trade those predictions in a live market. Will the SMU Mustangs win the ACC this year? Right now, SMU is trading at 12%, meaning a $100 trade would pay out $784.91 if they win the conference. On Kalshi, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house, and as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position. Trade the draft pick, the game, and more on Kalshi. Download the Kalshi app and use code LOCKEDON to get $10 when you trade $10. KALSHI. Kalshi. Trade on anything. 18 over only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Kalshi products are not available in all jurisdictions. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see kalshi.com/regulatory. One final team to preview here on today's show. Miami, SMU, and the Louisville Cardinals, I think, are clearly the favorites to win the ACC and are the 3 teams who have the best chance to get to the college football playoff. Joining us now is Dalton Pence, the host of Locked On Louisville. Dalton, I'm high on the Cards this year, man. I'm looking at what Jeff Brom has done here over the last couple of years. Year 1 gets him to the ACC title game. Year 2, 6-2 in conference last year. It was kind of a weird one, finishing off 4-4 in ACC play, but I love the portal additions, especially Tyler Thompson coming from North Carolina, Trey Richardson from Vanderbilt, and then Lincoln Kienholz, the quarterback from Ohio State. What are your vibes heading into this season where I think it could be a big one for the Cards?
Yeah, it's all centered around optimism. Look, you have, in my opinion, the most talented roster that Jeff Brom has ever had as a head coach. Don't think that's far-fetched to suggest at all. Combined with somewhat of a favorable schedule. I mean, sure, you've got some early tests with Ole Miss and you've got SMU week 3, but outside of that, you don't play Miami, you don't play Clemson, Virginia Tech, some of the other teams that are projected at the top of the conference. So really, I mean, everything is telling you that the Cardinals should be in the top 3 of teams that are contending to get to Charlotte. But like you mentioned, there's been some issues stumbling down the stretch in the month of November. So Louisville has to do a better job of avoiding that proverbial trap game this year.
Yeah, and 3 games out of the last 4 on the road there in November, at Georgia Tech, at North Carolina, home against Pitt, and then, of course, the annual rivalry game against Kentucky, where it's just who hates who more in those games typically, decide who ends up winning that. And certainly there's been times where Kentucky's hated Louisville more. There's been other times where Louisville's like, nah, we're way too good. We're going to blow you out. I'm curious, how important do you think for the Cardinals season is this game on Labor Day weekend in Nashville against Ole Miss?
Well, I think it's critical, and I had to mute myself because my dog is barking, trying to let me know what his thoughts
You're
are.
good.
He's like, dude, I'm so ready for football too. And I'm like, man, guess it runs with the household. But, truthfully, I think it's huge. The Cardinals are in the top 25 of the AP poll for the first time to start the season out since 2017. And I think that's for 2 reasons. Number one, I think they're a good team. But number 2, I think that the rest of the country also wants to see a ranked matchup week 1. So the Cardinals are kind of getting thrown in there, a little bit of a underlying motive, but they have every opportunity to prove that they belong. So I think that this is huge for at-large bid situations. You know, the ACC has to do everything they can and then some to be able to gain those spots. Miami almost got left out last year, even going 10-2 with no bad losses. So I think that the Ole Miss game is, of course, very key. I would argue that the SMU contest is the most important game of the season.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Ole Miss, opportunity to start out 1-0 and kind of solidify yourself in the country as a team not to be messed with would be great for Louisville. So the stakes are pretty high in Nashville on Labor Day weekend.
I think at the very least, which I hate even saying this, don't get embarrassed, because that takes away any opportunity at getting an at-large bid. We have seen, unfortunately, in this conference, when it comes to these kind of games, there have been teams, Clemson's been probably not the main culprit, but they've been a recent culprit that just don't live up to the billing in these marquee matchups in week 1. And certainly Clemson has one against LSU. And in this one, that's a big one. And I cannot wait to see. And I think that week 3 match against SMU is probably the game I'm mostly anticipating heading into conference play and just heading into ACC play in general, just the ACC season in general between SMU and Louisville. 2 teams I think have a chance of getting to Charlotte. So yeah, you're right. As far as trying to be an at-large team, unless you're Miami, Clemson, or Florida State, just having those brand names, you're probably going to have to win 11 games in the regular season and maybe even ACC title game, which of course get you in order to get that at large bid. If you're a team like Louisville, SMU, as we saw 2 years ago, and then everybody else in the conference. Let me know this. What's one thing you're excited about, one thing that concerns you, and then one thing that intrigues you about this Louisville team heading into the season?
Well, I'll start out with the concerns. We'll get maybe the things that aren't as optimistic out of the way. Special teams has been a little bit of a struggle early on in fall camp.
Okay.
The Cardinals kicker from last year, Cooper Ranvier, ends up going to Tennessee. And looking back on it, it's one of those situations where you wish Louisville kind of would have just given him what he wanted in terms of the NIL money. And because at the moment, it's been consistently inconsistent. And you know how important special teams can be. If you struggle in that aspect of the game, that can be the difference between winning and losing a certain game. And if you're an ACC team, like I mentioned, you got to do everything and more if it's in the hands of the committee at the end of the day. So the special teams is somewhat of a concern right now in mid-August. What I'm really excited about is just the skill positions overall in offense. I think the Cardinals are loaded on the offensive side of the ball. I think they have one of the best running back rooms in the country with Isaac Brown and Kewan Brown and Marquise Davis, the Missouri transfers, having an incredible camp. You got Brody Foley, one of the top tight end portal transfers of the offseason from Tulsa, who trailed only Kenyon Sadiq last year in receiving touchdowns for a tight end. And all signs out of fall camp have said that Trey Richardson is basically unguardable down the field.
Oh, love
the
that.
Vanderbilt transfer is one of the most explosive guys in the country. Lil Wayne McCoy has ACC experience at FSU. So your skill position guys collectively are really good. You might not have like the top end talent that you've had in years past with Chris Bell or Ja'Cory Brooks, but it's probably, and even Deion Branch, the wide receivers coach at Louisville, was like, look, this is Jeff Brom's best receivers by far in his career. So I'm excited for that. Intrigue is of course going to be around the quarterback, right? Career backup at Ohio State. Ohio State fans swear that this guy can lead a Power 4 team to a lot of success. And for Louisville fans, it's like, well, you don't really worry about it with Jeff Brom, but last year you went to the portal and got Miller Moss, and quarterback play was why you struggled. So think that some Cardinal fans are cautiously optimistic. Signs in fall camp are pointing to him living up to the expectations. But until you see him on that field on September 6th, there's going to be a little bit of intrigue.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by how that's going to go, because the fact that Lincoln Kienholz has more than 1 year of eligibility. We saw with Jack Plummer, we saw Tyler Shucken, and last year with Miller Moss. Those guys were 1 year and out. Now he can really, that being Jeff Brom, get his hands around this quarterback and get to develop him. And they say it was a very close quarterback competition. I was listening to the Audible hosted by Bruce Feldman, Stuart Mandel, and Ralph Russo over at The Athletic, and Bruce Feldman was reiterating that it was close in Columbus, and Julian Sang went on to be a Heisman Trophy finalist. So that says a lot about Kienholz and what this offense could look like at Louisville this fall. One final thing for you here. Looking over at FanDuel Sportsbook, they have U of L sitting at an 8.5 over-under win total. You taking the over or you taking the under?
Well, the over-under was at 7.5 for the longest. And I said on my show, I said, hammer the over. Of course, do your research. You always want to do your research when it comes to your money. However, if it's me, hammer that over 7.5 because Jeff Brom's won 8+ regular season games the past 3 years that he's been at Louisville. 8.5, ooh, that's a curveball, Julian. I did not expect that, and that makes me think a little bit more. But I think that this team is 9-3 or 10-2 at the end of the year. So instinctively, I'm going to go with over, but I mean, that just goes to show you that you have to start out well and you can't fall victim to the trap game later on.
Yeah, and I think really that final stretch, Georgia Tech can always be difficult. Kentucky, you never know. I think North Carolina should be one that Louisville wins. I mean, Raleigh's always a tough trip. But yeah, I look at that schedule. I think that this team with the talent, with Jeff Brom, I feel like this is the opportunity for them to make a run back at Charlotte again this season. But it will really come down to likely that game on September 19th. At home against SMU, and I cannot wait to see it. He is Dalton Pence, the host of Locked On Louisville. Check him out wherever you listen to your favorite podcast and over on YouTube, also over on socials at @dpence_. Thank you so much, Dalton, for joining us today on Locked On ACC.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much to Alex Donno of Locked On Canes, Grayson Singleton of Locked On SMU, and Dalton Pence from Locked On Louisville for breaking down the Miami Hurricanes, the SMU Mustangs, and the Louisville Cardinals heading into this 2026 football season. Be sure to check those guys out over on the socials and, of course, over on YouTube and wherever you listen to your favorite podcast to get the lowdown on the Canes, the Mustangs, and on the Cardinals all season long. That's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On ACC podcast. I am one of your hosts, Julian Council. Kenton Gibbs will be back with y'all later on as we continue to preview the ACC. Again, y'all subscribe and follow the show for free over on YouTube and wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow us over on Twitter at Julian Council and over at Twitter also TGIF_Kenton. In the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole, and we'll talk to y'all on Thursday, where we are going to preview 3 more ACC teams. The Clemson Tigers, the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, and the Virginia Cavaliers are up next. We'll talk to you about all 3 of those teams here on Locked On ACC.